Welcome to Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed, where conversations are designed for nonprofit leaders by nonprofit leaders to inspire, educate, and motivate. Get ready to dive into the world of nonprofits where the nerdy passion and unstoppable dedication of those making a real impact is celebrated. Together with your host, Jarrett Ransom, the inspiring stories, tactical insights, and game-changing strategies of nonprofit leaders will be explored. Join us for real talk with real people. Jarrett and her guests unravel the mysteries of successful fundraising, uncover the secrets of effective advocacy, and nerd out over innovative approaches to solving social challenges. Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed is your go-to podcast for no-nonsense discussions with real-life superheroes of the nonprofit sector. Get ready to unleash your inner nerdiness and discover or rediscover how to change the world together. Now let's dive in and embrace the power of our nerdy side.
Welcome back, my nerdy friends. This is going to be another rich conversation because today I am joined by Megan Bell. She is Director of Engagement at Daylight Advisors, and we had an extremely thoughtful conversation about the evolving world of philanthropic advising. Together, we explore how the role of advisors has expanded far beyond traditional charitable giving conversations and why today's approach requires confidence, competence, and cultural dexterity. I loved the conversation because Megan also shares what it really means to build authentic relationships with donors, also families and communities at large, while offering practical advice to all of us nonprofit professionals who want to become trusted partners to wealth advisors and philanthropic planners. We discuss the unprecedented intergenerational transfer of wealth that is happening right now and what this historic moment means for nonprofit leaders, fundraisers, and yes, even advisors. From the opportunities ahead to the responsibilities we all share in this space, this conversation is full of insights to help you strengthen relationships and maximize your mission's impact. But before we dive in, I want to give a special thank you to our podcast sponsor, Bloomerang. Thank you for supporting these meaningful conversations that empower nonprofit professionals to create lasting change. Now get ready because Meg shares a lot of fantastic insights. Hello, I'm so excited for this conversation, and I'm really excited today to introduce all of you, if you've not met yet, Megan Bell. Megan, welcome, and thank you for saying yes to having this conversation with me.
Thank you. I'm all about saying yes. Absolutely. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Well, kick us off. I like to start off, of course, with a pretty groundbreaking question. But that question, of course, is tell us about yourself. Tell us about the role or roles, plural, because, we wear many hats in the sector. But tell us about the work you do in the nonprofit space.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thanks again for having me. My name is Megan Bell, known as Meg Bell to many, and I am a philanthropic advisor. So I support multiple organizations, whether it's on the client side or whether it's on the donor side. But currently, I'm the Director of Engagement with Daylight Advisors, and we are a professional development organization dedicated to advancing philanthropic planning and advising. So I have a wonderful role of engaging learners in our work every day. In addition to that, I support other organizations in an advising role. So I feel really fortunate that I get to sort of touch the whole ecosystem and landscape around philanthropy. Thing about Daylight Advisors that's super unique is that all of us that work there are active practitioners because we strongly believe that we can learn from each other. And so we are all about practitioners teaching practitioners. Yeah.
I love that. And shout out to our friend Mike Worley, right, that connected us and said, Meg, you've got to meet Jarrett. Jarrett, you've got to meet Meg. And he knew exactly what he was talking about. We've had some great conversations.
He did.
Yeah. Well, one of our conversations that we, of course, keep nerding out on, Meg, is about this transference of wealth. There is a lot of money out there, and you have helped to shape conversations around modern philanthropic advising, all advising, but really how has the role of advisors evolved beyond traditional charitable giving conversations? Because you and I are having what I think are some disruptive conversations, and I know they're happening elsewhere. So how have you helped to shape these conversations, and what do they look like right now?
I love that question, and I appreciate that you recognize that this space is shifting with that transfer of wealth. I mean, we're talking about trillions of dollars that are about ready to be transferred from baby boomers to the next generation, right? So we have a whole new generation that's going to inherit this wealth, and I believe it's 18 trillion that will be available to philanthropy from the 124 trillion that's supposed to transfer. So there is a great generational wealth happening here, and I think what we need to recognize is that the landscape has evolved drastically. And to your point, it is not so much more about the tax and charitable advantage of giving, but it's really around mission, purpose, and legacy. And so I think as fundraising professionals specifically, we need to recognize that there's a broader understanding around philanthropic landscape and philanthropy. And so how can we better meet donors and clients in their communities? So I think the conversations we're really trying to engage our learners in is being simply more conversant. And when I mean more conversant, it's how do you talk about philanthropy to your donors, and that those conversations extend beyond the tax advantage. So, again, back to purpose, back to values, and back to legacy. I think those conversations have to exist, and being confident in those conversations are also really important. So understanding the terminology and the shared language around philanthropy. Does that make sense?
That makes so much sense to me. There's a lot of information there. And thank you for throwing out some stats and numbers, right? That's always really important. We like to say data is sexy. So having that data is really good. I want to build on that word confidence, because that is something that Daylight emphasizes, right? Confidence, competence, and cultural dexterity really in this philanthropic advising space. And you touched on that just briefly, but could you go a little deeper about what does cultural dexterity look like in practice when we're working with our donors, families, multi-generations, right? Like in broader communities, what does that look like?
Yeah, and I appreciate you asking. I think that's one of the biggest distinctions that our program offers, is that we're talking about cultural dexterity. And so, what do we mean? And I think it's important that folks engage in that, because cultural dexterity, I think about sort of what's underneath the iceberg. It's kind of what you can't see underneath. So when you're advising a client, right, you can see what I wear, you can notice that I wear glasses, but it's kind of what's beneath the surface, the experiences, the values, the traditions, the faith, the cultural background, the family history and life experience. All those things shape how they see the world, and including how they approach their philanthropy. So we want to make sure that anybody that is engaging with donors, that they have a dexterity around understanding that the folks come to philanthropy and come to their giving in different ways that are likely shaped by things you can't see, such as their cultural traditions, their faith, how they give, when they give, their timing of when they give could be completely dependent on family history, on cultural, on faith. Does that make sense?
That is such an astute comment, but practice, right? Like theory of practice and how this is taking place. Because as I just think about my career, Meg, and I'm totally going off the cuff here, but thinking of my career and the conversations I've had with donors, it really gets down to knowing the donor, having that relationship, right? So I so appreciate that Daylight incorporates this cultural dexterity, because it is a critical role that we can't overlook. Pun intended, right? Because you can't
you can't see it, right? Right. And it's really important, I think, also that you make no assumptions, right? And that's why that conversation is so valuable, and how you engage in those conversations are really important. It's simply just asking the question, about what your goals are. Where do you see your legacy? What do you care about, right? And not just making assumptions of what you can see and assuming you think that they are going to, want to give in this way or in this manner. So really, we deeply, deeply engage more conversation that really focuses on not making assumptions and understanding where people are coming from, because that will influence their philanthropy. It's influenced me. I mean, my whole money story is the reason I became into nonprofits. I was really dependent on social services, program, and community growing up. And I felt very strongly that I wanted to not only continue to support and make sure that those organizations continue to be lifted, in doing the work as a nonprofit professional, but also how I give now. It's been completely influenced on the programs that supported me in my youth and continue to support me. So again, we all come to philanthropy, I think, with our own story, and that story is important to understand as we engage them about their giving.
Thank you. You and I have had some deep conversations, right? And I really appreciate you sharing this so vulnerably and openly in this dialogue. I have a very similar story. And so we are just two of the billions of people that walk through this world, right? And so imagine the other stories that we have yet to hear, right? But we need to engage, we need to ask, and thank you. So I want to honor that truly. And I want to move us into the next question is really around working with wealth advisors. For our nonprofit rock stars that are listening, right? And they're thinking, okay, how do I build stronger relationships with wealth advisors and philanthropic planners, right? Like, so if you can tell us some practical ways, Meg, how do we go as maybe a development director or any title, right, in the development world or nonprofit world and say, okay, give me some practical ways to become more valuable and become a trusted partner in this entire ecosystem?
First of all, I just think it's great that you acknowledge that nonprofit professionals and financial planners and wealth managers should be working together. To me, it makes a ton of sense. And I think before we go into sort of practical application, I think it's important to recognize that nonprofit professionals and wealth and philanthropic advisors can benefit from a deeper understanding of each other's work, right? So just simply understanding each other's work, right? We want to make sure that that's shared, that that's understood. I think there's also this idea around wanting to create some shared language so that we understand one another. And that's sort of where Daylight sits as well as creating curriculum around shared language. We're deeply interested in engaging wealth managers because we think that they have the access to the wealth. And so how do they then, when it comes time to talk charitable conversations, that advisor knows about the nonprofit or an individual within that nonprofit or a philanthropic advisor that they could then, refer to, right? It's this idea of a whole system where we're bringing in development folks, and we're bringing in advisors, and we're bringing in estate planners, and we're bringing in tax accountants, right? And making sure that that whole ecosystem is engaging with one another about charitable giving, because it's not just the one individual that can support a donor. It's sort of this team plan, right? And we talk a lot about this portfolio approach, right? Like how you approach your finances, you should approach philanthropy in this portfolio approach. So I think it's just really important to recognize that we can do better and we can increase generosity if we are all working together in collaboration. So to your question about how we do that, I think it's really, really important that you sort of find yourself and show up where advisors are. So there's definitely organizations like Purposeful Planning Institute, which I'm a big fan of. They have the rendezvous is actually, I think, next week, but they bring together tax accountants, estate planners, wealth managers, nonprofits to really engage about purpose. So I think going where you can find each other and collaborate in space together is really important. Wealth Management Institute is another example where I think there's great opportunities for those two to engage. So for me, I think it's basically showing up where each other can be found. I also think engaging financial planners or wealth managers to be on boards and or to volunteer within your organization. I mean, I think we know, and I was a full-time volunteer myself, that when people volunteer, they become more deeply engaged with your organization. And so I think we could get really clever about how we engage individuals in our organizations, and it may be wise to consciously seeking out to have an advisor on your board, or to have a estate planner on your board, or a tax accountant on your board, so that they can understand your organization. So those are really, to me, it's very simple. It's very obvious, but I don't know that we all do it well or do it consciously. And so I guess I'd say it's a more conscious attempt to sort of be in the space and share in the space where they are.
I couldn't help but think of the proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, right? Yeah. And it really talks about this ecosystem. Like when we bring all of the moving pieces and professionals together, that's when we as an ecosystem, we as a community, we as a, greater impact and mission can go much farther, and
Yeah.
looking at it that way. So as you were sharing, that just kept popping up in my mind.
Yeah. And I think for financial planners or wealth managers, and that's sort of the individuals we're really looking to engage too, is that they are the ones that don't have the are as conversant or confident in the charitable discussion. So how do
Uh-huh.
we help them with that? But also how do we make sure that they know that there's other folks like philanthropic advisors or fundraising individuals within a nonprofit that they can lean on to support their
Right.
donor, right? Because we really talk
Absolutely.
about philanthropic advising really broadly. Like you are, even though Jarrett, most of your experience has been, well, your experience has been vast, but in fundraising is still philanthropic advising. It's anyone, it's the what, the how, the who, and the when around wealth and how you give it away and how you use it for impact. And so we want to make sure that individuals know that there's this broader field of profession of philanthropic advisors. And so
That's
I
right.
think fundraising professionals benefit from knowing that their role is more broad and they are philanthropic advisors in the truest sense because they are engaging with donors. And our hope is that they're engaging with donors in lots of ways, but they also recognize that with the evolving landscape that they can talk more fluently about complex assets, right? About now that there's Bitcoin and we have new generation, like we need to all be talking in the same language and shared language and understand this landscape more deeply.
Yes, we do. And you'd mentioned wealth, and we talked about the largest intergenerational wealth transfer that, is happening ever in history. We talked about this in the beginning. We touched on this, throughout our conversation. We're in the middle of this like wealth tsunami, if you will.
Yep.
So I'm curious, kind of a two-part is what opportunities and responsibilities, so opportunities and responsibilities, do you see this creates for all of us in this ecosystem? What are you seeing by
Yeah.
this time? I mean, this is like it's unwritten. So what do we do?
It is unwritten. And I think the opportunity is tremendous and equally overwhelming. So you kind of have to unpack it a bit.
Yeah.
But I first want to just acknowledge that I appreciate that you mentioned responsibility because it's truly, truly what is at the heart of it. The role of a philanthropic advisor or a fundraiser is truly one of trust, right? I think it is a privilege to help guide someone's charitable giving. I think it's truly a privilege to sit in a room and ask a dinner, or what do you care about? What's your legacy? What's your purpose? What's your value? So I think we do have a great responsibility, not only in guiding our donors, but in the impact we can make in this world. And that's one thing that we strongly believe in at Daylight. We've actually developed a module around ethics in philanthropy because there truly has not been sort of a code of ethics available around how we engage folks around charitable giving. So responsibility is critical. I take great responsibility and I find it a privilege to sit in that space. So how can we engage sort of, you talk about engaging everyone, but particularly the next generation, there's a huge opportunity right now with this transfer of wealth to engage sort of the next generation. And the ways that we can do that. I mean, I think there's lots of ways. You have the next generation that you can support who truly are looking for more modern assets. They're working in crypto. They want high transparency. They want impact measurement. They're looking at collaborative giving circles, and they love convenience. And so as we look to engage, the next gen, are we technically savvy in it? Are we transparent? Are we giving them impact or can they see impact in what they're doing? So I think that's sort of the way you can really deepen your relationships with next gen. Also engaging women. As we know, the largest transfer of wealth is about to happen, and we as women are going to be the biggest inheritors. And guess what? We as women might want to get rid of the financial planner my husband been using because we want someone else, right? Or we want to do it differently. And so we really need to make sure that we understand women and how women want to give. And so I think engaging women more deeply, more thoughtfully is an opportunity because we are going to be the ones that have the wealth. So that's really, really exciting to think about. And actually at Daylight, we do offer a philanthropic planning with women certificate specifically to help individuals engage more deeply with women. I think also tailoring communications, it kind of goes back to the next gen, but being able to sort of tailor the communications. And we're going to I talk about technology, and I think we do need to leverage technology. And there's a ton of conversation around AI. But I think at the very, very core of it is the relationship. It truly, truly is a relationship. And so, I think creating that lasting impact, the relationship has to be at the core, and all these other things are ancillary in the sense of how they can help you get there. Right. So, again, technology, women, next gen, I think there's huge opportunities to engage with those demographics, those folks around wealth. Did I get to your question? I get so
You
excited
did,
about
and so
all
much.
the
I
things
know
you
so much.
talk about that I go off on tangents. So I'm sorry.
No, it's so rich. There's so many things that come with this, as we said, opportunity, overwhelm, right? Like there's a lot that comes in that. I think too, as we look at this, it's moving beyond this current intergenerational, and like you're a mom, I'm a mom, looking at how are we sharing philanthropy and modeling philanthropy with the next generation of givers, right? Like all of this, I think we get to learn right now during this largest transference of wealth. We have that as a responsibility. I take that as a responsibility, but also as a really amazing opportunity. There's so much going on. I love that Daylight has the Women in Philanthropy certificate, or that focus, right? Like so important, because that is definitely a demographic, as you mentioned. I think I read where it's like 3 times, because we have the ability of like 3 times seeing our own wealth. As you said, we inherit wealth, maybe from our partner, maybe from our parents, right? And what that looks like. So huge decision makers right there in that conversation. So you've given us so very much, Meg, right? So much. And I'm so appreciative. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, where the heck can people find you, right? Like you are brilliant. How do we connect with you? How do we learn more about Daylight Advisors? Tell us all of the places where we should go next.
Well, you can always find me on LinkedIn at Meg Lemieux Bell. So feel free to connect with me there. And then you can find me at Daylight Advisors, Megan at daylightadvisors.com. And you can learn more about Daylight Advisors at daylightadvisors.com. And we are more than just a curriculum. We offer research, we do convenings. And what I will say is we are a community of practitioners that are deeply engaged in the work in the world. And we really work hard to lift one another up in our practice. And so I always just encourage individuals to join our community. And it's really easy to do that. We have Introduction to Philanthropic Planning, which is a free complimentary certificate that anyone that is interested in sort of getting level setting on philanthropic planning should take advantage of our Impact Philanthropy Advisor program. Again, absolutely complimentary. We are really dedicated to building out this field, advancing this work, and making sure that we all are engaging more deeply with, to your point, you've already said this, conversant, conversation, confidence, and competency, and cultural dexterity. So yeah, yes. And you can probably find me in a city near you, because I'm always on the road. And the one thing I love to do is anytime I go on the road is I meet with our learners, because we have learners all over the world. In fact, Jarrett, I'm with you today because one of our learners, Mike, was the one that connected me when I met him in South Carolina. And he said, you need to know Jarrett. She's in Phoenix, and you've become an incredible resource, and you equally are brilliant. And I've just really felt blessed that you've come into my world, and that was through this community.
Yeah.
So I can't say enough about
Right.
the yeah.
Yeah, that is absolutely right. Yeah, love that so very much. Well, Meg, one final takeaway. If there was anything you could leave our listeners with today, what is it that you want them to hear, to know, to remember? Any final piece of sage advice?
Oh, I wish I could come up with a drop the mic moment. I mean, I just think this work is so much about showing up. And I think it's about putting it into action. I think we read a lot, we talk a lot. I mean, there is so much conversation going on right now about generational wealth, the transfer, even this conversation. But how do we put it into action? And so I guess I would just encourage individuals that are listening, it's about how can you take this, whether you take more courses or you become certified in something, but like what action are you taking? Right. Even individually in your own role of charitable giving and how you give and show up in the world, or how are you helping your donors? So, show up and take action, I guess would be what I'd close with.
Great advice. Thank you. Thank you. You heard it here with Meg Bell. Meg, again, thank you for all that you do. And thanks for all the contributions that Daylight Advisors brings to this sector as well. It's been a lovely conversation.
Thank you. So happy to be here.